What would you do if you discovered you'd been tricked into marrying the most dangerous man in Asia, and the only reason you're still alive is because he made you his wife? The story opens with Ha Rin in a sterile attorney's office, staring at a document she just signed, while a lawyer congratulates her on her marriage. She's confused. She thought she was signing a translation contract, not a marriage certificate. Across the table sits In Soo, impeccably dressed in a black suit, calmly smoking a cigar, watching her with intense, dark eyes that reveal nothing. What is this? Ha Rin's voice shakes as she reads the Korean and English text. Certificate of International Marriage, Park In Soo and Choi Ha Rin. In Soo leans forward, his voice low and measured. You're my wife now. The contract is legal in 17 countries. Congratulations, Mrs. Park. Ha Ren's world shatters as she realizes she's been tricked into marrying Seoul's most dangerous international crime boss, a man she met only once before, 3 months ago, at a business negotiation she thought was legitimate. If you believe that sometimes the person who seems to trap you is actually trying to save you, but you'll have to survive long enough to figure out which is which, keep watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. The story then flashes back 3 months to show the first meeting Ha Rin doesn't remember as significant, but In Soo will never forget. Ha Rin is working a freelance translation job at a luxury hotel conference room, what she thinks is a standard business negotiation between international investors. The room is tense, filled with dangerous-looking men in expensive suits. She's translating between Korean, English, and Mandarin, trying to stay invisible and professional. The negotiation suddenly turns violent. One of the foreign representatives pulls a gun, accusing the Koreans of betrayal. Everyone freezes. Ha Rin should run, should hide, but instead she keeps translating, her voice steady and clear, mediating the misunderstanding that's about to get people killed. She explains the contract clause that was mistranslated, clarifies the cultural confusion, and diffuses the situation with nothing but words and courage. In Soo, sitting at the head of the Korean side, watches this ordinary young woman risk her life to prevent bloodshed, not because she's brave, but because she believes in doing her job correctly. She treats these terrifying men like businessmen, not monsters. She speaks to In Soo with professional respect, not fear. When the meeting ends without violence, In Soo asks her name. Choi Ha Rin, she answers, gathering her papers, already thinking about the next job. She doesn't notice the way he watches her leave, the way his expression shifts from his usual cold calculation to something almost soft. Back in the present, in the attorney's office, Ha Rin is screaming that the marriage is fraud, that she'll go to the police, that she'll fight this. In Soo stands, towering over her, and his voice is quiet but absolute. The police can't help you. The marriage is legal, and you're safer as my wife than you ever were as a witness. Witness? Ha Rin freezes. Witness to what? In Soo's smile is cold. That negotiation 3 months ago? Every person at that table is dead now. Everyone except you. And the only reason you're alive is because I made you untouchable by making you mine.
Ha Rin stared at the document in front of her, her hands starting to shake. The Korean characters were clear enough, but her brain refused to accept what they meant. Certificate of International Marriage? Park In Soo and Choi Ha Rin. What is this? Her voice came out thin and high. I was supposed to sign translation contracts. You said... I said you'd be signing documents today. The man across from her, Park In Soo, leaned back in his leather chair, a thin trail of cigar smoke curling above his head. His black suit was perfectly tailored, a gold star brooch glinting on his lapel. You did. Congratulations, Mrs. Park. The attorney beside him slid another paper across the polished desk. The marriage is registered and legal in 17 countries, including South Korea. If you have any questions about... Ha Rin shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly. This is insane! I didn't agree to marry anyone. I came here for a translation job. You signed the papers. In Soo's voice was calm, almost bored.
He took another drag from his cigar, dark eyes watching her with unsettling focus. "Your signature is on every page." "Because you told me they were employment contracts." Hareen fumbled for her phone, fingers clumsy with panic. "I'm calling the police. This is fraud. This is legal." In-Soo didn't move to stop her. "Go ahead. Call them. They'll tell you the same thing the attorney just did. We're married. The documents are legitimate. You signed them willingly in front of witnesses." Hareen's call connected. Her words tumbled out in a desperate rush. Trapped, tricked, fake marriage, help. The officer on the other end listened patiently, then asked to speak with the attorney. After a brief conversation, he told Hareen what she already feared. If the documents were legal and she'd signed without being physically forced, there was nothing the police could do. Her next call was to her own lawyer, a family friend who'd helped her mother with medical paperwork. He promised to look into it and call her back. Hareen turned to run. She made it 3 steps before 2 men in black suits materialized in front of the door. Not security guards. Bodyguards, she realized, the kind who knew how to hurt people. "Sit down, Hareen." In-Soo's voice hadn't changed pitch, but something in it made her freeze. "We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Then just listen." He gestured to her chair. "Please." She remained standing, arms crossed. Her phone buzzed, her lawyer calling back. His voice was apologetic. The marriage contract was airtight, professionally done, completely legal. Annulment would require In-Soo's agreement. There was nothing he could do. Hareen's knees went weak. She sank into the chair. In-Soo leaned forward, resting his arms on the desk. "This isn't kidnapping. This is protection. You just don't understand yet." "Protection?" Her laugh came out bitter. "You tricked me into marrying you." 3 months ago, you translated at a business meeting. Do you remember it? The question threw her. "I translate at lots of meetings." This one was at the Sheila Hotel, international investors. The discussion got tense. Hareen did remember. The tension in that room was thick enough to cut. One of the foreign representatives pulled a gun, accusing the Korean side of betrayal. She'd kept translating, her voice steady even as her heart hammered, explaining the contract clause that had been misunderstood. The situation had calmed. The gun had been put away. She'd gone home that night and stress-cried for an hour. "What about it?" she asked. In-Soo pulled out his phone, scrolled something, then turned the screen toward her. News articles. Obituaries. Death notices. "Everyone at that table is dead now," he said quietly. "Everyone except you and me. The Chinese representative? Car accident 2 weeks later. The Russian? Heart attack. The Japanese investor? Fell from his balcony." He paused. None of them were accidents. The room felt suddenly cold. "You witnessed sensitive negotiations," In-Soo continued. "You heard things, saw faces, could identify people. In my world, witnesses don't survive. The families involved wanted you eliminated." "You're lying!" But her voice shook. "Am I?" He showed her another image, a photo of her apartment building taken from across the street. The date stamp was from 2 months ago. "I've had people protecting you since that meeting. You never noticed because they were good at their job." Hareen's phone showed 3 missed calls from her mother. Her hands were shaking too badly to call back. "This is manipulation! You're using fear to control me!" In-Soo stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Believe what you want, but you're alive and you're mine now. That's all that matters." He nodded to his men. "Take her to the car." "No! I'm not going anywhere with you!" But the bodyguards were already moving. One took her arm, not roughly but firmly enough that she couldn't pull away. Her phone was taken, her bag was collected. "Don't hurt her," In-Soo's voice carrying a warning edge. "She's my wife." The last thing Hareen saw as they led her from the office was In-Soo crushing his cigar in a crystal ashtray, his expression unreadable. The car was a black sedan with tinted windows. They drove through Seoul streets, heading away from her neighborhood, towards the wealthy districts on the edge of the city. Hareen sat rigid in the back seat, a bodyguard on either side, her mind racing through impossible options. Through the window, she watched her normal life disappear behind her. Hareen thought she was entering prison. She didn't know she was entering the only place in the world she'd be safe. But first, she'd have to survive living with the man she was certain was her enemy. The compound was nothing like Hareen expected. The car passed through iron gates topped with cameras, then drove up a winding path lined with perfectly trimmed trees. The mansion itself was massive, 3 stories of modern glass and stone, looking more like a luxury hotel than a home. Armed guards stood at intervals around the property. 12-foot walls surrounded everything. A woman in her 50s waited at the entrance, her kind face creased with a welcoming smile. "Mrs. Park, welcome home. I'm Mrs. Kang, the head housekeeper." "Don't call me that," Hareen said. Mrs. Kang's smile didn't waver. "Of course. Please, come inside." The bedroom they led her to was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a garden. The bed was enormous, covered in silk sheets. A walk-in closet held clothes in her exact size, designer labels she recognized from magazine ads. The bathroom had a soaking tub and heated floors. It was perfect. The door had no lock on the inside. Hareen tested the windows. Sealed. She tried the bedroom door. It opened, but a guard stood in the hallway watching her with professional politeness. "Can I help you with something, ma'am?" She slammed the door. That first night, Mrs. Kang brought dinner on a tray. Hareen refused to eat. The next morning, Insu himself appeared at her door, dressed casually in dark slacks and a crisp shirt. "Join me for breakfast," he said. "No." "Insu." She turned her back on him. He left without another word. The gifts started arriving that afternoon: a designer handbag, expensive jewelry, books in her favorite genres. She threw them all into the hallway. On the third night, Hareen made her move. She waited until 2 a.m., then slipped out of her room. The guard in the hallway was gone. Shift change, maybe. She made it to the garden, found a section of wall with a tree growing close, and started climbing. She'd almost reached the top when floodlights blazed to life. "Ma'am, please come down." A security guard stood below, speaking into a radio. "We have a situation." Within minutes, she was surrounded. Not grabbed or forced, just surrounded. There was nowhere to go but down. Insu appeared in workout clothes, slightly out of breath like he'd been running. He looked at her sitting on the ground, scraped hands bleeding from the tree bark, and sighed. "I told you," he said, his voice tired. "You're safer here. Please stop trying to die." "I was trying to escape." "Same thing." He nodded to a guard. "Medical kit." He cleaned her hands himself, his touch surprisingly gentle. Hareen sat rigid, refusing to look at him. "The walls have sensors," he explained, applying bandages. "The grounds have cameras. There are 43 guards on rotation. You can't leave without me knowing." "So, you're my prisoner." "You're my wife. There's a difference." "Not to me." Over the following days, Hareen learned the compound's rhythms. Mrs. Kang ran the household with quiet efficiency. The security chief, a stern man named Park, no relation to Insu, watched everything with sharp eyes. The guards changed shifts every 8 hours, precise like clockwork. She also learned that her mother had been moved to a private hospital room. The bills, which Hareen had been struggling to pay for months, were completely covered. Her mother had a team of specialists now, the best care money could buy. Hareen found Insu in his study, working at a massive desk. "You're paying my mother's medical bills." He didn't look up from his computer. "Yes?" "Stop." "No?" "You can't buy me with my mother's health." Now he did look up, his dark eyes steady. "I'm keeping her alive because you love her. That's what husbands do." "You're not my husband, not really." "The law disagrees." He closed his laptop. "Your mother is getting the treatment she needs. She's comfortable, safe. Would you prefer I stop? Should I tell the hospital to discharge her back to the public ward where she was before?" Hareen's hands clenched into fists. "You're manipulating me." "I'm taking care of your family. That's my responsibility now." "I didn't ask for this." "No," he agreed. "But you have it anyway." She wanted to scream at him, wanted to throw something, but he was right about one thing. Her mother was finally getting proper care. The guilt Hadine had been carrying for months, knowing she couldn't afford the treatment her mother needed, had eased. She hated that it had eased. That night, Mrs. Kang brought dinner again. This time, Hadine ate it. Not because she'd forgiven anything, but because starving herself wouldn't change her situation. Insu appeared at her door after she'd finished. "Thank you for eating," he said quietly. Hadine didn't answer. "I know you hate me. I know I think you're a monster, but I meant what I said. You're safer here than anywhere else in the world." He paused. "Get some rest." After he left, Hadine sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her bandaged hands. The room was beautiful. The clothes were expensive. Her mother was being cared for. She had everything except the one thing that mattered, her freedom. Hadine was learning that prison could be beautiful, that a captor could act like a protector, and that the most confusing trap is one lined with genuine care. Harin woke to the sound of gunfire. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then the alarms started, loud, piercing wails that made her bolt upright in bed. Red emergency lights flashed in the hallway outside her room. Her door burst open. Not Insu, 2 guards she didn't recognize. "Ma'am, come with us, now." "What's happening?" "No time, move." They practically dragged her down a hallway she'd never seen before, their hands firm on her arms. More gunfire echoed from somewhere below, shouting, the sharp crack of something exploding. They stopped at a reinforced steel door. One guard pressed his palm to a scanner. The door hissed open, revealing a small room lined with monitors and supplies. "Stay here," he ordered, pushing her inside. "Don't open this door for anyone except Mr. Park or myself. Understand?" The door sealed shut before she could answer. Harin was alone in the panic room, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The monitors on the wall showed different views of the compound, guards taking positions, muzzle flashes in the darkness, figures in black moving with military precision through the grounds. This wasn't random. This was an organized attack. On one screen, she saw Insu emerge from the main house. He'd thrown on pants and a shirt, but no shoes. In his hand was a gun that looked too comfortable in his grip. She watched him move through the garden with the same efficiency as the attackers. No hesitation, no fear. When he rounded a corner and came face to face with a man in tactical gear, Insu didn't pause, just raised his gun and fired twice. The attacker dropped. Harin's hands flew to her mouth. Insu kept moving, joining his guards at a defensive position near the east wall. She counted 6 attackers on the screens, maybe more. Professional, well-trained, they moved like soldiers. But Insu moved like something else entirely. She watched him take down another attacker with brutal efficiency, then another. When his gun clicked empty, he didn't retreat. He closed the distance to the nearest attacker, and they fought hand to hand. It was over in seconds, the attacker on the ground not moving, Insu's hands covered in blood. The fight lasted maybe 10 minutes total, though it felt like hours. When the gunfire finally stopped, Harin counted 3 guards being helped away, wounded but alive. 2 attackers lay motionless on the ground. 1 was being dragged to the main house, alive but barely. The panic room door opened. Insu stood there, breathing hard. His white shirt was splattered with blood, not his own, she realized with sick certainty. His knuckles were split and bleeding. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough with urgency. Harin couldn't speak, couldn't move. He stepped into the room, his hands reaching for her face, turning her head gently to check for injuries. His touch was careful, despite the violence she'd just watched him commit. "Harin, answer me. Are you hurt?" "No," she managed. "I'm fine." The tension left his shoulders. "Good. Stay here. I'll come back for you." "Wait, what's happening? Who were those people?" "Exactly who I told you about." He turned to leave. "The ones who want you dead." Harin followed him out despite his order to stay, her legs shaky. Guards were cleaning up the grounds, their movements efficient and practiced. This wasn't the first attack they'd dealt with. Insu went to the house where they'd taken the captured attacker. Harin stopped in the doorway, unable to make herself go further. Through the open door, she heard Insu's voice, cold, controlled. "Who sent you?" The response was in Mandarin. Harin's translation skills kicked in automatically. "I don't know what you're talking about." Wrong answer. The sound that followed made Harin flinch. "The Lee family," the man gasped out. "They paid us to kill the girl, just the girl. Those were our orders." "Did they tell you she's my wife?" Silence. "Did they?" Insu's voice dropped lower. "Yes, they said you wouldn't really care, that she's just a translator, that you'd let it go. They were wrong." More sounds Harin didn't want to identify. Then footsteps. Insu emerged with his expression blank. "Take him to the hospital, then call Li Wei. Tell him if he wants war, he'll get it." He finally noticed Harin standing there. His expression softened slightly. "You should be resting." "How many?" Harin whispered. "How many people want me dead?" He studied her for a long moment. "Currently, 4 major families. They see you as a loose end from that negotiation, a witness who knows too much. And you? I'm more dangerous than all of them combined." He said it simply, like stating a fact. "You're safe with me." Harin looked at the blood on his shirt, at his split knuckles, at the cold certainty in his eyes. "This is what you are. Violence, death." Yes, he didn't deny it. "This is why you're here. They wanted you dead. They still do. But now you're my wife, and attacking you is attacking me. They won't try again." Because they knew what he was capable of, what she'd just watched him commit. Harin felt sick. But she was also, terrifyingly, still alive. Harin hated that Harin was right. She hated that the world outside his walls wanted her dead. But most of all, she hated that when he asked if she was hurt, he saw genuine fear in his eyes, and it looked like love. Insu left for a business trip to Busan. Harin waited 2 hours after his departure, then slipped out of her room. His study was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the gardens. The door was unlocked. Arrogant of him, she thought. Or maybe he didn't think she'd dare. The office was neat, organized. Expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk with 3 computer monitors. She tried the desk drawers. Most were locked, but one slid open easily. Inside was a file folder with her name on it. Harin's hands shook as she opened it. The first page was a background check, her address, her job history, her mother's medical records. Below that, more papers. Security reports, she realized, dated 3 months ago, right after that negotiation. Subject observed leaving apartment 7:45 a.m., followed to subway station, no suspicious activity. Potential threat identified near subject's workplace, threat neutralized. Subject visited hospital, mother's condition stable, medical bills past due, paid anonymously per boss's instructions. Page after page. Every day for 3 months, Insu's men had been watching her, following her, protecting her from dangers she'd never known existed. Harin found financial records next, her mother's hospital bills all paid, her overdue rent settled, with a note to her landlord about an anonymous benefactor. Even her maxed-out credit card had been paid off. Then she found the photos, surveillance images. Harin leaving her apartment, Harin at the grocery store, Harin visiting her mother in the hospital, her face tired and worried. Harin at a coffee shop translating documents on her laptop. He'd been watching her for 3 months. The door opened behind her. "Find anything interesting?" Harin spun around. Insu stood in the doorway, still in his business suit. He must have come back early. "You were stalking me." Her voice came out shaky with anger. "For 3 months." "I was protecting you." He crossed to his desk, completely calm. "The moment you left that negotiation, you became a target. I couldn't let them kill you. So you decided to marry me instead." Harin threw the folder at him, papers scattered across the desk. Without asking? Without even telling me I was in danger? If I'd told you, you would have run. Insu picked up one of the photos. Hareen smiling at something on her phone, unaware she was being watched. Running would have made you vulnerable. This was the only way. The only way to what? Trap me? He looked up at her then, his dark eyes intense. The only way to keep you breathing. Everything else is secondary to that. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. I wasn't your wife 3 months ago. No, he agreed, but you were going to be. I knew that the moment I saw you at that negotiation. He set the photo down carefully. I knew you were mine to protect. Hareen wanted to scream. Instead, she turned and walked out, her whole body shaking. She found herself in the kitchen, where Mrs. Kang was preparing dinner. The housekeeper took one look at Hareen's face and poured her a cup of tea. You found the files, Mrs. Kang said gently. You knew? Everyone who works here knew. Mr. Park was different after he met you. She handed Hareen the tea. You should talk to Mr. Cho. He's known the boss longer than anyone. Mr. Cho was Insu's head of security, the older man Hareen had seen giving orders during the attack. She found him in the security office, reviewing camera footage. Mrs. Park, he stood respectfully. How can I help you? How long have you worked for Insu? 20 years. Has he always been like this? Mr. Cho considered the question. Mr. Park is single-minded. When he wants something, he gets it. When he decides to protect something, nothing can touch it. He paused. But I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you. He doesn't care about me. He's obsessed with me. There's a difference. Is there? Mr. Cho pulled up something on his computer, financial records. 3 months ago, Mr. Park started liquidating assets, selling properties, moving money out of certain businesses. I asked him why. He said he was planning to go legitimate, build something clean. Hareen stared at the numbers on the screen. In 20 years, he never once talked about leaving this life. Then he met you. Suddenly, he's talking about legitimate businesses, about having a family, about building something that won't get the people he loves killed. The older man looked at her steadily. You changed him, even before the marriage, just by existing. That night, Hareen couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the files, the photos, the 3 months of secret protection. Insu had been guarding her life before she even knew his name. But he'd also been planning to trap her, to marry her whether she agreed or not. Which truth mattered more? Hareen was trapped between 2 truths. Insu had stolen her freedom, but he might have saved her life. He'd manipulated her, but he also protected her. And the worst part? She was starting to care what happened to him, too. The screaming woke Hareen just after midnight. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. For a moment, she thought it was another attack. Then she realized the sounds were coming from down the hall, from Insu's room. Not screaming, exactly. More like someone trapped in a nightmare, fighting something they couldn't escape. Ha-Ren slipped out of bed and followed the sound. Insu's door was open. His room was empty, the bedsheets twisted like he'd been fighting them. She found him in his study on the first floor. He sat behind his desk with a half-empty bottle of whiskey, still in the clothes he'd worn to dinner. His hair was messy, his eyes red. He looked exhausted in a way she'd never seen before. Hareen, his voice was rough. Go back to bed. I heard you screaming. Nightmare, nothing important. He poured another drink with shaking hands. She should have left, should have gone back to her room and pretended she'd seen nothing. Instead, she stepped into the study and closed the door behind her. What was it about? You don't want to know. Maybe I do. Insu laughed, but there was no humor in it. Blood, death, the usual. He took a drink. I was 7 when my parents died. Car accident. No other family, so I ended up on the streets. Hareen sat down in the chair across from his desk. Insu continued, staring at his glass. Kim Tae-young. Everyone called him the Tiger. He took me in, raised me, trained me. His jaw tightened. Trained me to kill, to intimidate, to survive in his world. I was 14 when I killed someone for the first time, a rival gang member who came after Kim. I protected my boss, and after that, I was his weapon. You were a child. I was a soldier. He met her eyes. Violence is the only language I speak fluently. Control is how I show I care. I don't know how to love like normal people do. Ha-Ren thought about the files in his office, the 3 months of secret protection, the way he'd asked if she was hurt after the attack. You've never cared about someone before? I cared about Kim. He's dead now. Insu's voice went flat. Killed by the same people who were at that negotiation. That's why the meeting happened, everyone trying to fill the power gap he left behind. He refilled his glass. You're the first person I've wanted to protect instead of use. The first person who made me think about building something instead of just taking it. So you trapped me. I know my methods are wrong. He stood abruptly, walking to the window. But when I saw those men planning to kill you, every other option felt like losing you. I couldn't... His voice cracked slightly. I won't lose you. Ha-Ren watched him standing there, shoulders tense, looking more lost than dangerous. This wasn't the cold, controlled man who'd told her she was his wife. This was someone barely holding himself together. She almost reached out to touch his shoulder, almost offered comfort, but she stopped herself, her hand falling back to her lap. Insu noticed. He always noticed. You can hate me, he said quietly, but don't pity me. I made my choices. Did you? The words came out before Ha-Ren could stop them. Or were you forced into this life just like you forced me into marriage? Insu turned to look at her, genuinely startled. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched between them, but it didn't feel angry anymore. It felt like understanding, like two people who'd both had their choices stolen, trying to make sense of what came after. If I could go back and do it differently, ask you properly, court you, give you the choice I never had, I would. He set down his glass. But I can't unmake what I've done. I can only promise I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I don't know if that's enough. I know. He looked at her with those dark, haunted eyes. But it's all I have to offer. Ha-Ren stood, suddenly needing to leave before she said something she couldn't take back, before the sympathy growing in her chest became something more dangerous. You should sleep, she said. The nightmares are worse when you're tired. How do you know? My mother used to have them, after my father left. She said talking about them helped. Ha-Ren, Insu's voice stopped her at the threshold. Thank you for listening. She didn't answer, just closed the door quietly behind her. Ha-Ren left Insu's study that night, understanding what terrified her most. She was starting to see him not as a villain, but as a victim of his own brutal upbringing. And if he was a victim too, then what did that make their marriage? Two prisoners trying to survive? You're letting me leave? Insu looked up from his breakfast. With security, to visit your mother. I thought you'd be happy. Ha-Ren was happy and immediately suspicious. Why now? Because you asked. Because your mother deserves to see you. He returned to his coffee. And because keeping you locked up isn't working. 2 guards accompanied her in the car. Ha-Ren didn't care. She pressed her face to the window, watching Seoul pass by like she'd been away for years instead of weeks. The hospital was bright and clean. Her mother's new room was on the top floor, private and spacious. When Ha-Ren walked in, her mother's face lit up. Ha-Ren, I was so worried. You haven't visited in so long. I'm sorry, Mom. Things have been complicated. They talked for an hour. Ha-Ren couldn't tell her mother the truth, couldn't explain the forced marriage or the compound or the men who wanted her dead. So she lied, said she'd taken a live-in translation job, said she was fine. She was leaving her mother's room when someone called her name. Ha-Ren? Oh my God, it is you! She turned to see Min-Jun, a former colleague from the translation agency. He rushed over, his face bright with relief. Where have you been? You disappeared. I tried calling, but your number was disconnected. We all thought—" He stopped, looking her over. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I just changed jobs." "Without telling anyone? Hareen, we were worried about you." Minjun touched her arm, friendly and concerned. "Some of us thought maybe you were in trouble or—" A hand settled on Hareen's waist, firm and possessive. "Is there a problem?" Insu's voice was cold enough to freeze. Minjun jerked back, eyes widening as he took in Insu's expensive suit, the dangerous edge in his eyes, the way he was holding Hareen like she belonged to him. "No, I was just saying hello to a friend." "She's occupied." Insu's arm tightened around Hareen's waist. "You should go." "Insu," Hareen started, but Minjun was already backing away, nearly tripping in his hurry to escape. "Sorry, I didn't mean— I'll see you around, Hareen." He practically ran for the elevator. Hareen yanked herself out of Insu's grip. "He's just a friend. You can't threaten everyone who speaks to me." He looked at you like he wanted more than friendship. "So what if he did? We're not really married, not in any way that matters." Insu's expression went hard. "We're married in every way that matters. Legally, physically, and whether you admit it or not, emotionally. You feel this too. I don't feel anything for you except anger." But her voice shook when she said it. Insu stepped closer, backing her against the wall. He didn't touch her, but she could feel the heat of him, the intensity. Her heart was racing. "Then why did you almost comfort me last night?" His voice dropped lower. "Why do you watch me when you think I don't notice? Why does your breath catch when I'm near?" Hareen couldn't answer, couldn't think. He was too close, and her body was betraying her. Pulse jumping, breath quickening, heat flooding her cheeks. "You can lie to yourself," Insu said quietly, "but your body knows you're mine." Hareen shoved past him, needing distance. "My body doesn't get a choice either, apparently." She walked quickly toward the elevator, fighting the urge to look back, fighting the truth of what he'd said. The car ride back to the compound was silent. Hareen stared out the window, her thoughts spinning. She was attracted to him. When had that happened? Somewhere between the nightmare and the files and the way he'd looked genuinely terrified when he thought she was hurt during the attack. She hated it, hated that her body responded to his presence, hated that her heart had started doing stupid things when he looked at her, hated that part of her wanted him to kiss her in that hospital hallway. This is what he'd done to her, trapped her so completely that even her own feelings had become a prison. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment in the hospital. Insu's voice, his closeness, the way her body had responded despite everything her mind was screaming. He was right. She did feel something. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. Hareen was losing the battle she'd been fighting since the marriage began. Not the battle for freedom, that was already lost. The battle against caring, against wanting, against falling for the man who'd trapped her in a golden cage and called it love.
Hareen woke to a hand over her mouth and a cloth pressed to her face. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but the chemical smell made her head spin. The room tilted sideways. Everything went dark. When she woke again, she was in a warehouse. Concrete floors, rusted metal walls, the smell of oil and decay. Her hands were tied behind her back, secured to a chair. 3 men in tactical gear stood guard. One stepped forward, pulling off his mask. Chinese features, cold eyes, expensive watch. "Mrs. Park, so nice of you to join us." Hareen's throat was dry. "Who are you?" "Li Chen. Your husband killed my cousin." He crouched in front of her. "Now I'm going to kill his wife. Fair trade, don't you think?" Back at the compound, Insu returned from a meeting to find chaos. Guards shouting, Mr. Cho on 3 phones at once, Mrs. Kang crying in the kitchen. What happened? Mr. Cho's face was gray. Mrs. Park was taken 2 hours ago. The night guards were drugged. Someone on the inside helped. Insu felt something crack inside his chest. Find her. Now. We're trying, but... Find her. His voice came out as a roar. The call came 20 minutes later.
A video message on Insu's phone. Harin tied to a chair, Li Chen standing behind her with a gun to her head. Hello, Insu. I have something of yours. If you want her back alive, come alone to the warehouse on Pier 19, unarmed. Surrender yourself and your territory. Then maybe, I'll let her live. The video cut off. Insu was already moving toward the door when Mr. Cho grabbed his arm. Boss, it's a trap. They'll kill you both. Let us handle this. No. She's one woman. The organization is everything we've built. Insu turned, and something in his eyes made Mr. Cho step back. She's my wife, Insu said quietly. She's everything. The organization is just business. He stripped off his jacket, his gun, his knife, checked himself for any hidden weapons and removed them all. Boss, please. That's an order. Stay here. But even as Insu walked out, he knew Mr. Cho wouldn't listen. Good. He was walking into certain death, but maybe his men could save Harin after he was gone. In the warehouse, Harin watched a laptop screen showing the approach to the building. She saw Insu get out of a car, hands raised, completely alone. He actually came. The mighty Park Insu brought down by an ordinary woman. Pathetic. Li Chen smiled. Bring him in. They dragged Insu into the warehouse. He didn't resist, just kept his eyes on Harin, checking for injuries. Let her go, he said. You wanted me. Here I am. Release her. Why would I do that? Li Chen pressed his gun to Harin's temple. Watching you die will hurt her. Watching her die will hurt you. I want you both to suffer. Insu's jaw tightened. Let her go unharmed. Kill me if you want. Just release her first. No, Harin's voice cracked. Don't die for me. Insu, please. It's okay. Insu's voice was gentle despite the guns pointed at him. I've got you. I take it back. Harin was crying now. Everything I said. I don't hate you. Please don't die. Li Chen cocked his gun. How touching. Kill him. The explosion came from the east wall. Mr. Cho and 20 armed men poured through the opening, gunfire erupting instantly. Li Chen's men scattered, returning fire. The warehouse became a war zone. Insu threw himself at Li Chen, knocking the gun away from Harin's head. They fought, brutal and fast. Insu landed a punch that sent Li Chen sprawling. He was reaching for Harin's restraints when the gunshot echoed. Insu jerked, his eyes going wide. Blood bloomed across his white shirt. Then another shot. Another. He fell forward, covering Harin with his body, even as bullets tore through him. No, 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 Harin was screaming. Mr. Cho's men eliminated the remaining shooters. Someone cut Harin's restraints. She caught Insu as he collapsed, his blood soaking into her clothes. Stay with me, she begged. Insu, please. His eyes were already closing. Safe now, he mumbled. You're safe. Then nothing. The private hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Harin sat in a plastic chair outside surgery, still covered in Insu's blood. Mrs. Kang had tried to get her to change clothes. She'd refused. 6 hours. The surgery had been going for 6 hours. Finally, a doctor emerged, exhausted. He's alive. Barely. 3 bullets. 1 collapsed his lung, 1 lodged near his spine, 1 through his shoulder. We've done what we can, but the next 48 hours are critical. They let Harin into the recovery room. Insu lay motionless, tubes and machines keeping him breathing. His face was pale, peaceful in a way she'd never seen when he was awake. Harin took Insu's hand, careful of the IV lines, and held on. She'd spent weeks hating him, weeks planning to escape, weeks telling herself she was his prisoner, his victim, that she'd never forgive him for stealing her choice. But watching him walk unarmed into that warehouse, offering his life for hers, she'd understood the truth. He loved her, really loved her, enough to die. and somewhere in the chaos of forced marriage and golden cages, she'd fallen in love with him too. Harin sat beside Insu's hospital bed, holding the hand of the man who'd stolen her freedom, and prayed to every god she didn't believe in that he wouldn't die, because somewhere between prison and protection, between rage and rescue, she'd fallen in love with her captor.
3 days. Insu had been unconscious for 3 days. Harin hadn't left his hospital room except when the doctors forced her out during procedures. Mrs. Kang brought food she didn't eat. Mr. Cho brought clean clothes she didn't change into. She just sat beside Insu's bed, holding his hand, watching the machines that proved his heart was still beating. "Mrs. Park, you need to rest," a nurse said gently. "You haven't slept." "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She was exhausted and terrified and desperately waiting for him to open his eyes. On the 3rd night, he did. Harin had dozed off with her head on the edge of his bed, still clutching his hand. She woke to the sound of his voice, rough and weak. "Don't cry." She sat up fast, tears already streaming down her face. "You're awake. Oh God, you're awake." Insu's smile was faint. "I'm too mean to die." "You're an idiot." Harin was crying harder now. "You walked into a trap for me. You almost died. You—" She couldn't finish, her throat closing up. His hand tightened weakly around hers. "I'd do it again. I'll always choose you." "Why?" The word came out as a sob. "Why me? Why did you do all of this?" Insu was quiet for a long moment, gathering strength. Then he spoke, his voice low and honest. 3 months ago, I saw you walk into that negotiation like you weren't afraid. You were the smallest person in the room, but you spoke with more authority than anyone there. You stopped a war with just words." He paused, breathing carefully around his injuries. "I was captivated. I started asking questions. Found out you were supporting your sick mother alone, working 3 jobs, still smiling." Harin listened, not moving. "When I learned you were a target, that the families wanted you dead for witnessing that meeting, I started protecting you immediately. I told myself it was just practical, keep a valuable translator alive. But I was lying to myself." His eyes met hers. "I fell in love watching you live your ordinary, brave life. The way you visited your mother every day. The way you thanked the subway attendant. The way you kept going even when you were exhausted. So you married me without asking. It was the only way to make you untouchable in my world. In the criminal code, a wife is sacred. Attacking you would mean declaring war on me." He coughed, wincing. "I know my methods were wrong, but I couldn't see any other way to keep you alive. You should have told me, given me a choice. If I'd told you about the danger, you would have run. Running would have made you vulnerable, and they would have killed you." His voice was steady, despite the pain. "If I'd asked you to marry me, you would have said no. Your no would have been a death sentence. So you decided for me." "Yes, and I'd do it again." Insu's grip on her hand was stronger now. "Because you're alive, angry at me, hating me, but alive. I can live with your hate. I can't live with your death." Harin pressed her free hand to her mouth, trying to hold back more tears. "Harin, I've been leaving the criminal empire, piece by piece, building legitimate businesses, creating an exit, all so you could eventually have a normal life, so we could have a normal life." He coughed again. "Everything I've done, the manipulation, the control, the possession, it all comes from one desperate need: keeping you breathing." "I don't hate you." The words spilled out before Harin could stop them. "I did at first, but after watching you almost die for me, I can't hate you anymore. I think I—" She took a shaky breath. "I think I love you. And I hate that I love you, because I should hate you." Insu's expression softened in a way she'd never seen. "You should.
I don't deserve your love, but I'll spend my life earning it anyway. Heron leaned forward, her forehead resting gently against his. You're an idiot, she whispered. You said that already. It bears repeating. Insu raised his hand, slowly, carefully, and cupped her face. His thumb brushed away her tears. Heron, can I kiss you? It was the first time he'd ever asked her permission for anything. She nodded. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined, not possessive or demanding, just tender and careful, like he was afraid she might disappear, like he was trying to say everything he couldn't put into words. When they pulled apart, Heron was crying again. I choose this, she said softly. I'm choosing you, not because you trapped me, but because I want to. Insu's eyes closed, relief washing over his face. Thank you. In that hospital room, with Insu weak and wounded, and honest for perhaps the first time, Heron made a choice. Not the choice he'd stolen from her in that attorney's office, but a real choice, to love him, to stay with him, to build a life with the man who'd trapped her and saved her in the same breath. Insu was released from the hospital 2 weeks later, still healing, but stubborn about going home. His first stop wasn't the compound, it was his lawyer's office. Haran sat across from him in the same chair where this had all started, confused about why they were there. The lawyer slid papers across the desk. Haran read the first page and froze. Annulment of marriage. What is this? Insu's voice was quiet. Your freedom. Complete annulment. New identity papers. A bank account with enough money to live comfortably anywhere you want. Overseas protection arranged. He met her eyes. This gives you what I took. Your choice. The plane leaves tomorrow. I won't stop you. Haran stared at him. You're letting me go? I'm giving you what I should have given you from the start. The choice. His hands were steady on the desk, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. If you choose to leave, I'll protect you from a distance. If you choose to stay... He didn't finish, afraid to hope. Haran looked at the papers. Everything was there. Legitimate documents, a new name, freedom to go anywhere in the world. She could reclaim the life he'd stolen. She could leave. I need to think, she whispered. Take all the time you need. Back at the compound, Haran wandered through rooms that had felt like a prison weeks ago. Now they just felt like home. Mr. Cho found her in the garden. He's really letting you go, the older man said. It wasn't a question. He gave me annulment papers. The boss is giving up everything for you. Territory, power, the organization. In 20 years, I've never seen him put anyone before the empire. Mr. Cho looked at her steadily. Until you. That night, Haran couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about two paths, freedom or love, the life she'd planned or the life she'd found. In the morning, Haran found Insu in his study, staring at nothing. I have my answer, she said. He stood quickly, his face carefully blank, bracing for rejection. I hated you for taking my choice, but if I leave now, I'd be taking it from myself. So I'm making my own choice. She stepped closer. I choose to stay. I choose you. Insu's control shattered. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. His whole body was shaking. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. Thank you. Within a week, Insu made his announcement to the criminal underworld. He was leaving. Mr. Cho would take over operations. Insu was going legitimate, building an international trade business using his connections legally. The response was immediate. Some accepted it, others saw it as weakness. The final threat came from someone inside his own organization, a lieutenant who'd been with him for years, now working with rival families who wanted Insu dead for abandoning the alliance. The attack came at the compound. This time, Haran didn't hide in a panic room. She stood beside Insu as his security dealt with the betrayers, her hand steady on his arm. When the traitor was brought before them, Insu's justice was swift and brutal. But now Haran understood. This was protecting their future, their choice to build something different. "It's over," Insu said, when it was done. "We're free." 1 year later, Haran stood in the nursery, directing Insu as he struggled with crib assembly. The instructions say part A goes into slot B. "I know what they say," Insu muttered, fumbling with a screw. Mr. Cho appeared in the doorway, grinning. Boss went from terrifying warlords to reading parenting books. How the mighty have fallen. Insu looked up, smiling. "I fell for her the moment we met. Just took her a while to fall for me, too." "You mean took you a while to stop being a terrifying kidnapper and become an actual husband," Haran teased. Insu's smile faded to something more serious. "I'm still working on that. Every day." Haran touched his face gently. "I know. That's why I stayed." Later, after Mr. Cho left and the crib was finally assembled, Insu took Haran's hand. Their wedding rings caught the light, the same rings from that forced marriage at the attorney's office. "Do you ever regret it, staying?" Haran thought about the question carefully. "I regret that you didn't give me a choice at the start, but I don't regret the choice I made in the end. That's the difference, choice. And I choose you. Every day, I choose you." Insu pulled her close, his hand resting on her pregnant belly. "And every day, I'll work to deserve that choice." They stood together in the nursery, in the compound that was now a home, protected by walls that kept them safe instead of trapped. Insu now ran a legitimate business. Haran worked as his translator, her actual job, chosen freely. The marriage started with deception, but it became real through choice. His choice to change, her choice to stay. And maybe that was what love was. Not the perfect beginning, but the choice to keep choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. They began with deception, tricks, and stolen choice. They ended with truth, transformation, and freely given love. Insu fell for Haran the moment they met. Haran fell for Insu the moment she realized his love was real. And their story proved that even love born in darkness can transform into light if both people choose to change, choose to grow, and choose each other every single day.